What's going on, everybody? It's me, Asad Hashim Ali, back again with another episode of Behind the Grind. And this time, I've got my partner in crime, except we don't do any crime. We do business the legal way. It's Nagin Ansari, everybody. Nagin, how are you?
I am good, Asad. Very happy
dressed
to
up
be
for
here.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good, actually. I'm glad.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been a while since Behind the Grind started off. And even though you weren't guest number 1 or 2, I actually wanted to bring in the heavyweights at a later point. You know, bring in the cool people, bring in the people who actually have a solid story to share with their experiences. So that's why now the next few episodes of Behind the Grind are also going to be out with a bang. Have a lot of solid stuff in there. So for all those listening, Nagin Ansari is my partner at Backspace. She is the backbone of this company. She is the reason why I'm still sane and alive and able to kick ass. Collectively, we kick ass and we do some solid work. I think she also thinks so. Don't answer that if you think otherwise, Nagin. But no, so for all those listening, again, Behind the Grind is that show where I sit with people who have done cool things in their past, continue to do cool things on a regular basis, people who have an awesome story to share, and also, most importantly, are just well-rounded and solid individuals who I personally think have a lot to share to the world. So this is also not just a show for me to learn something new, but also for an opportunity for everyone to learn something new. Nagin, you have around 15 to 20 years worth of experience in the ad sector, in the marketing, in advertising, in designing, and your interests and the way you work are in two completely different platforms, in two different areas altogether, I think. So before we get into, just to give you a little heads up, we're going to take this conversation in a series of steps. So first, let's start off back from when you were even younger than me, when you had just entered university, or maybe when you had gone out of university. At that point in time, did you ever think that you would have started a career in advertising?
Not at all. No, I actually never wanted to be in advertising, and I think the term advertising puts me off.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, it's not a term I associate with. I feel like I've always loved words, and I have a degree in design. So those two things to me help people share what they're doing, and I feel very, very motivated to I actually feel very empathetic towards people who really, really want to share what they're doing and are stuck with either words or in presentation, and I just jump in and I want to help them. That kind of is what I feel advertising, should be the essence of it, the very, very human essence of it.
Yeah.
So the term advertising, not so fond of it, no.
So when you actually were a kid, did you ever think that advertising, or even let's call it, let's say the creative world, because I know that you don't confine yourself into these different disciplines or these different areas also. I think you're a very free-spirited individual. Did you ever think that you would take this route in design in particular?
No, not really. I didn't. I thought I'd be into arts or something, but creating things or something, creativity, not design specifically, no. I actually found design to be just something that helps aesthetics, and so that's great, but not like a profession or something I would just take up like that, no.
Mm-hmm. So other than knowing you for a couple of years now also, and going through your LinkedIn, fun fact for everyone, one fine day, Nagin messaged me saying that, why are you looking at my LinkedIn profile? And that's when I sent all these questions for Behind the Grind, just to prepare for this a little better. But how about you walk us through that? How about you walk us through that journey?
Viewed your profile, yeah. That was
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. So how about you walk us through that journey? You were in KGS, and then from KGS, you went to Indus Valley, right? So how was that
Yeah,
time
so
for you?
I was originally at St. Joseph's Convent, where my entire family went for generations. My mother,
Mm-hmm.
all my khalas is that. So the convent experience does something to you. It does these trademark sort of traits, I think, personality traits that are given to you at a convent. The fact that you are very, very aware of right and wrong, the fact that you are very self-critical, the fact that you're very disciplined, the fact that you are hardworking and probably cannot tolerate laziness. These are some things that, now that I'm in my late 30s, I meet people at there's somebody sitting at a meeting, and I look at them and I think that's good work ethic. And we get to talking and we find out, oh, convent, so I mean, convent is usually Jesus and Mary, but even St. Joseph's, a lot of the seniors we had, a lot of the people we've been around as alumni, um, I think St. Joseph's, kind of the teachers we had, really played a big role. And the one thing it gave me was the gift of reading. And I think that is, if you give one gift to somebody, is to get them to love to read. Because all the books that I read when I was 11, 12, 13, 14, they help me every day, literally. I don't know how else to put it. It's not even a cliche or a quote. They actually help me. The funny thing is that when lockdown happened and people started to talk about mental illness, I immediately thought of this book which I had read. It was called The Long Walk, and it was one of the very like random pieces of Russian literature that I don't think very many people know of. And that book was about a person walking, and just the perseverance, just human spirit and resilience. And I think a lot of those themes run through Russian literature, and I really, really, I changed, when I read that book. I realized how much we are capable of. So St. Joseph's gave me that. I went to KGS for A levels. It was great exposure. Met a lot of good people, made good friends, great teachers, lots of literature again, Urdu, English. We were surprisingly the first batch to do Urdu literature for A levels. Like, I think in Karachi, we were the first, and I was the first person to take it also. I remember the Urdu teacher at KGS, Mrs. Riaz, saying, "आप आपकी नाम से हम बिस्मिल्लाह कर रहे हैं," type. So, to this day she looks at me very fondly, and I should probably look her up and find her and say hello. Yeah, so that was KGS. Then I went to Indus because I had an elder sister who was at Indus, and my parents told me that I should do the same. I actually wanted to study psychology. That has been
Really?
my lifelong dream, and I was not allowed to because I think everybody felt it would, for a creative person, it's a little bit scary that they're already overthinking, and then they're going to go into psychology, and then what if they, how do you contain a person like that? I was a rebellious kid, so I think my parents thought it's the safe, route to take. Just follow your elder sister. I wanted to go to NC, but my mother wanted me close to home, so
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I went to Indus, and the reason I went to Indus was offering tabla classes, and I wanted to learn, very, very desperately wanted to learn how to play the tabla. And that didn't happen because when I joined, they said tabla classes are off as of this semester. So I was really disappointed. I was very unhappy to be at Indus initially. And then, the work started, and then it was just the work for me. Great experiences, lovely memories, lots of learning, very, very difficult also. And and I did not want to go into advertising. I actually didn't know what I would do after Indus, but on my graduation day, while I was still in the graduation robe, I got a call from the CEO of AdCom, and they told me to come in to just meet. And I said, I'm not interested, and they said, no, just come have a conversation. So
Wow.
yeah, then that was advertising. Suddenly I was in it. I was in the deep end. I was working. um, Adcom was like an institution, I feel. So I think the addictive part of the experiences I've stuck with is the fact that I've been learning there. And I think the things that you get bored of are the ones that you're just applying yourself to, and you're not really growing.
Yeah.
Because as long as you're growing, there's this weird discomfort, there's this weird, tension almost, and that is amazing. I love that. Even now, like now, the challenge of working with kids and now to top it off, from
Mm-hmm.
home under lockdown. I think that excites me because I know I don't know how to do it, and that excites me, you know.
Brilliant.
So yeah,
So,
that's when it. I've also, I mean, AdCom was one, but there was obviously AdCom was like another 3 to 4 years of hardcore training for creativity and for design and for pure advertising, because that was a very fast growing advertising agency. So after that, I went for a bit. I got married while I was there, and I went for a bit to Blitz DDB, which was another very interesting place to work at. And then the next sort of job I had was at Idea Simple, which, to quote the words of Irfan Amir, who founded Idea Simple, which was the next best thing to having my own thing, my own agency of sorts, because I got to run it almost. And that was, again, 5 years of great learning,
mm-hmm.
in which I had my second. And then there's Backspace, yeah, in a
Wow.
nutshell. Mm-hmm.
This is like the entire episode of Behind the Grind in like 5 minutes. I love it. Uh,
Yeah. I said,
let's.
do you remember the first time we were in front of like where there was a camera between us? This is exactly what happened.
This is exactly what happened. I remember.
This
I
is
remember
exactly what happened.
very
We
clear.
walked in, yeah, and I asked you, is that something you want me to say? And you said, that's it, you're done. I said, oh, wow, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And so for
That's
everyone, just
great.
to
Now
give
we
you a
can
little.
talk about other things.
Sorry.
That's great because we can talk about other things now. I don't like spotlight so much.
I know, but it's
Mm.
okay. So just to give everyone a little context to this last part about what Nagin said. Nagin came into Cedar when I was still working there. She was a core course instructor over there, and she came in because we were creating these promotional videos to show to the students. And I sat her down in the principal's room, uh, put her behind the desk, asked her to just explain what it is and like go free with it. Like, I don't really care. I'm not gonna ask you to repeat things. She did it, and I was like, great, okay, thank you, bye. She's like, what? That's it? I was like, yeah. In 2 minutes, it was done. And she's also then waiting around. She's outside. She's like, that's the quickest, one of the quickest shoots probably. I'm sure that you must have seen happen ever. Also,
Amazing, yeah.
yeah,
I thought you were going to rehearse or something. Yeah.
yeah. No, that's how I do. It's all natural. Even this, by the way, it's one take, right? That's how you do.
Awesome. Awesome.
But again, so I want to go back actually to with the point that you mentioned about convent and the work ethic, actually, because this is something where um we align a lot. You said work ethic, you use the word grit, you use the word resilience and perseverance also from your lessons from the long walk. um,
Hmm.
all of these, I think, are traits which we don't necessarily see very often also in people, or it develops over time. I don't mean to say that everyone has to be born with that level of resilience and that grit and that mindset to excel and to push forward or to be disciplined towards what they do. They, of course, they learn that over time. But for you
Hmm.
yourself, and you always bring up your German upbringing also, not to say that you are German, but like you grew up in Germany and you always
There's
somehow bring that connection back, that there's influence. So shed
Hmm.
some light over there. That how do you feel that your childhood experiences formed you? And then how are you trying to bring that into your kids also?
Okay, so two things. I said one, so the German bit, well, I wasn't really raised there. I was born there. My parents lived there for a very long time. And I think what happened subconsciously or unconsciously was they figured out that there are some things the Germans do better. And so they adopted them.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them perhaps I wouldn't carry forward. Surprisingly, this is one of the questions that I was asked when I went for my child's interview when he got into school. I was asked, what part of your parenting would you the way you were raised, what part of it would you continue and what part would you change? And I think that discipline, or the ability to to see things objectively, the ability to see duty as duty, and to see the rest of it as to have that kind of control, is something that my parents instilled in me. They made me they made me resilient just by being resilient and just by encouraging it, throughout life. It was not something that was just lectured, it was that they lived it. I saw them being resilient. I realized this is how you're supposed to be. I was not allowed to, you know um, we never had conversations like, if everybody is so I was in class 2. I'll narrate an incident, and this is one of those rare occasions when you can actually do that. I was in class 2. We were writing some article, and I clearly remember it because it really impacted me. The teacher said, write an essay on what you do in a day, right? And so she said, what's the first thing you do when you wake up? And I said, I make my bed, I fix the sheets. And the whole class started laughing at me. And there were some kids who were sitting in front of me who I knew came from slightly, affluent, or so to say,
Mm-hmm.
spoiled background. um, and when they laughed at me, I felt very hurt, as a 7-year-old bacha would. And I said, what, you don't make your bed in the morning? And she said, that's just so funny. And they laughed and laughed. And I went home to my mother and I said, you make us make our beds in the morning, and nobody in class does that. And she said, that has nothing to do with what other people in class do. It's what you're supposed to do for life. You sleep, you get up, and you make. And I said, okay. And so many years later, there are articles now that I come across which say that, there are literally articles which say, make your bed, on how to be a CEO, and it will say, make your bed, wake up in the morning and do these simple things. And so in those ways of life, there were these amazing lessons that we picked up, at home. And I think the German influence is about things like, punctuality, respecting someone's time, where my parents didn't budge. They were very, very particular, and so were we. And I think that helped me, because I was perceived by other people who feel those are great values to have. And when they see those, they recognize you as one of them. And so invisibly, it has been helping me. It has been helping me in so many ways, and I'm so glad that I have those unplanned kind of so to speak, habits, and ways of looking at the world. The one part I wouldn't take forward maybe is the emotional, is the lack of expression. I feel like that's something that I have seen in a lot of Germans. So it's not just that my parents lived there. We had other German German sort of culture in our family. There were uncles who were married to Germans, who still are. They visit all the time, and so we kind of had an idea about how different they are from Pakistanis and from Desis. So there was very little. I mean, it's not to say that they're not pleasant people, and or jovial, or very hospitable. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
It's just that they I feel they have a certain strength about them, that they will say that, okay, it is strong to be not expressive. And I don't agree with that. As I grow up, I realized that, I like the desi dil halka karna concept, because end of the day, the whole world is now looking for ways to to vent and to ventilate feelings, and to discuss feelings, and to face them, and so all the emotion intelligence that is in the world is pointing in the direction of sharing how you feel. And it's okay to feel, and it's okay to cry. And so I'm not at all sort of saying that, generalizing German culture with it, but I feel like that's something my parents, maybe because of their own experiences, they picked up and they instilled in the house. And I kind of don't agree very fully with that.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting. So it's
Mm.
so so again, like with all these lessons that you've learned growing up also, and then how you want your children also to grow up, what's been something which always and which continues to inspire me about you specifically is that you're managing all of this while being a mother, and you have taken your kids to work, you've taken your family to work, and you brought your work to your family also. So now coping with the virus and the lockdown, and we're all working from home, before the work from home, you were already also working from home. You would come in for an hour or two every day and zoop, go pick up the kids and then home and feed them and do all that and then put them to bed and then back on calls again at night. How has that been? How did you get that, like, you know, that jazba also to end up doing it?
So, Asad, I think anyone who gets an opportunity to do that would do that. I've been very lucky. I've had people who have understood that, okay, they've seen through the sort of the restrictions I have, and they have seen them as restrictions, and they have identified and trusted that I really want to do what, I want to work. And when I was employed, I think I was lucky. So it's not that everybody has understood. It's that I have also been turned away from places where I for example, needed to, I had bills to pay and I would want to keep a job. There were people who said very, bluntly, who were not even open for a conversation. They said, uh, we don't have a policy of just having people come in part time, so sorry. And then I have been lucky enough to have people who so Idea Simple was an example, because that was my very first experience. And my sister met Irfan Amir because she worked in the same building in a different place. So she came and told me that there's somebody who said that if your sister has worked at Adcom and is free and has a kid, so she can't do like a full-time job, I'm open to having her part-time or something. And this was someone who didn't know me, who didn't know how what kind of a work ethic I possess. And I said, no, I can't. My child is one. I was a first-time mother. I didn't know what to do. I had nobody to leave him with. And so it took a lot of courage and tears and leaping into something you don't know. It was very difficult to do, but I got lucky because he said to me, you can come in for an hour thrice a week. And I said, I don't know, because I have nobody in my family has used a daycare ever. So I've left him at a daycare and I can't breathe right now. I said this to him, and I think it was my honesty or my, being so blunt. He said, you know what, bache pal jate hain. It's your first kid. He's little. It's difficult, but believe me, he's gonna be fine. And he didn't need to say that. He could have just judged me and said, okay, fine, then, why are you here? But he didn't. And so I've been very lucky that way. And that was thrice a week, 1 hour. Many of those when I would be leaving my kid crying, and I would come out and I would cry. I would have to actually stop myself from crying because I didn't know if I was doing the right thing. But you know what? It worked out because of the same thing. Because if you keep trying to do something and you don't give up on it, it works. You have to believe in it. It's as theatrical as it sounds, but that's how my life has been. So it's worked. And that wasn't the only person. This the second time. So I work with this place called Ithaca Capital, which you know about. And the same thing happened with Saad Faruqi. And he said, you can work from anywhere. I don't mind. These are the things that need to be done. You can come and meet us for, this many hours a week, and you can build a team. And so at that point, Ithaca Capital didn't even have a logo. And now they have multiple websites, and they've grown in the past 3 to 4 years. And I've built a team, and things are exactly what Saad said they would be. I didn't know, but I thought if he's with me on it, and I'm fortunate, then what excuse do I have to say I can't do this? And of course, there are days when I say that, to which my husband is witness. But then again, I'm lucky that way. He understands that it's just me having a bad day, or I'm exhausted, or I just need to get over it, and I'll be okay tomorrow. And that's what keeps me going. I think it's very simple. I think anyone who loves what they do and gets an opportunity just would do it, you know. The
And
sad thing is, Asad, the sad thing is, and this is something I feel very strongly about, and I would love to, discuss this with you, and we
please,
do talk about it, which is, and so the last time I wrote an article on this was in Aurora, and I wrote a work from home article, and it's very strange that lockdown happened, and that article keeps coming back to me, and it spoke about things like trust, that employers need to believe that someone who is saying they will do something, they need to develop that sense. They need to understand and discriminate and discern that there is a person who looks eager, who has a good track record, who is hungry, and is also dedicated, is not just doing this for the money, is also passionate about what they do, is good at what they do. All of those people deserve the opportunity to do it. And sadly, I feel there's like a handful of people, who would say it's okay, you can work whenever, wherever, because your reasons are real. You need to go home. Your child is important. Your child needs you, or is sick. I've had people around me, siblings, cousins, women who have very little children, who have kids throwing up on them while they're on a meeting with their boss, and they can't put the phone down because they just can't say it. It has happened to me too. I have had a miscarriage, and after it I have called up office, and I have heard things like, it's too bad you can't come in today. There was a lot of work. Very sorry to hear that, but there's a lot of work. Let's discuss it tomorrow if you can come in tomorrow. And I've faced that and experienced that kind of inhuman treatment. And so it's just the mindset, you see. It doesn't mean that they work better or earn better or retain better or anything. Those companies can change their mindset, and that should be a challenge they should be ready to accept, and that's how they should grow. And I hope that I can live up to it, and I hope that I can, for the rest of the years I have, this is one of my invisible fights. I want this to change in Pakistan and in Karachi. And I know so many women, so many of my friends who are sitting home because कैसे जाएं, बच्चा है, घर के काम है, or there are bad days when, you've just had it, you can't. And nobody understands that at work. You get fired, you get, insulted, nobody understands it. You're tired of defending and explaining and covering up. So you give up on it, right? So yeah, it's just human. It's just empathy that's lacking. And that's something I think at Backspace, you and I are very, very conscious of. We really
yeah.
want to keep that, right?
And we've had these. That's whoa! I had no idea about that, and that's actually kind of like cheesed me off right now with what with how actually the workplace can end up looking, and how the workplace ends up being formed. And I think that, I don't know if you remember this, but this was one of the observations that I had about the pandemic and the lockdown starting globally before it even got to Pakistan. That
Hmm.
one thing that's going to come out of this is इंसानियत, कि लोग अभी
Yeah,
इंसान बन जाएंगे वापस, एंड वो एक जो
yeah,
ट्रस्ट था, वो जो भरोसा था, वो वापस आने वाला है लोगों में. And I
बिल्कुल.
think this is that opportunity for all of us. I think that if whether or not you're an employer, whether or
Hmm.
not you're working for a poor, in a poor work culture, you need
Hmm.
to have that empathy with people, which was lacking for a very long time. And I think that it's jolted us a little bit to start getting that back. And even
Hmm.
now, like what you're saying about us with Backspace, I for correct me if I'm wrong, culture is more important, trust, environment, empathy is more important for us than that strict deliverable, than that strict deadline, than that target that has to be met.
Yeah.
Even we don't have targets, like we don't believe in that kind of a system also, you
Hmm.
know. And
So also because Asad, the work we do, so creative work, and I'm sure you have enough what you call hippies all around you to
yeah.
now know that if you are struggling with an idea and you're coming up with mediocre ideas because you're just not happy, you're not inspired, you're not feeling it, or you're not comfortable, AC नहीं चल रहा, गर्मी लग रही है, and So my students at Indus Valley made a lot of fun of me when I told them this, but every creative person has obviously a zone or a space or some level of comfort they need physically also, obviously mentally, emotionally, but also even basic Maslow's hierarchy of needs type, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you are running a creative agency and you don't understand that people need to be happy and comfortable, then um, you need to learn a few things, right? You need to
Yeah.
improve those. So yeah, employers are going to be able to see and give merit. It's give people credit for the things they actually do, and the people who work will stand out from those who really don't contribute much,
Yeah.
because everyone is looking really closely at productivity and contribution, and things like how how self motivated are you, and things like that, which should actually have been part of any should be part of every company regardless, but right now they're really so that is something that if you create a work from home culture, despite lockdown, and you allow people to work virtually. Google has this huge virtual workforce, right, and growing, and they talk about it all the time. And there's so many women with kids who are employed, world over, and they are very productive. And there is even some research to prove that women who have young kids are so aggressive and so tenacious about their time that they are the most focused people to have in your meeting, because they will have no bullshit. They will see through it. They will call somebody out. They will say, not gonna work. So they will not be there to flatter anyone or to, to just stroke someone's ego or anything. They're gonna be, it will be about the work, and it will be focused all the time. And I've felt it too. If I've had to go meet, it really hurts. The small talk before a meeting, that is a very typical Pakistani corporate culture thing, sorry to say. और आप सुनाए नवाज शरीफ बेनजीर जरदारी, the Imran Khan, like 10-15 minutes of a meeting gone by, samosa chai, jalebi, and I don't know. It's just something in our culture that I would, so that's where the German thing comes in, because that part I have actually been a little rude at some points and said, okay, so I have to leave, can, if it's okay, can we just get to this part and then you guys continue, because so yeah,
Yeah.
that's going to start. So the real things are going to start to matter under lockdown, and I hope
Yeah.
that means a good thing for virtual work as well.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah,
let's pivot away actually a little bit, but still stay on this area of the lockdown.
hmm,
How has it been for you as a mother during this time, coupled with the fact
hmm,
that you are also a faculty member at IVS? So
yeah.
there's a lot more to juggle with that time, with family all around. So how has that been for you?
It's been tough, Asad. There are days,
Yeah, I know.
when things don't get done, and that really hurts me. So in turn, I don't sleep well because I feel like, I'm just chasing this train, and it's what I guess leads to things like anxiety. And um, I've been called a pirki many times. Pirki is this desi toy which is like a lattu, but it
Mm-hmm.
just spins like endlessly. Um, yeah, so it's been tough, very tough. They've been really bad days, but then there have been somewhat better days. And the so the teaching bit is difficult on another level. It's not difficult because you have to sit down and teach, or because I really enjoyed the part about taking a course which was supposed to be taught in studio and then converting it into an online course, because I loved the fact that we now have to exactly go by learning objective and then see which parts of it. I actually even made a little diagram just to explain it to myself and my students, that these are the parts that we have a gap in, so the human interaction, me reading their faces when I say something. I know they've understood, or I know they completely don't get it. So I would keep talking about it. So those facial cues we read, or you see someone with a body language which makes you feel you need to go up to them and talk to them about how their work is going, or spend 5 minutes and drag a chair and sit next to their desk. All of that now cannot be done. So though it's actually, this part was very interesting. The part that got very difficult and is still driving me crazy is the fact that students are so not motivated in this environment.
Mm.
They're having so much trouble, keeping that focus alive, and actually really, getting shaking this off and saying, okay, I this is my work. I just have to read this, I have to study this, I have to design this. um, they're having trouble being very focused about it, and that's natural, but that's been a challenge for me. I've been trying to, talk to them and motivate them where I can, share reading, share material with them. But with creative children, I think it's a little difficult because they are very sensitive. They feel all the pain of the whole world is, so they get overwhelmed, and most of them are like that, and that just, it makes it difficult, to focus on just the work itself. So there's a lot else going on, and that's draining as a teacher, but it's also, it makes me feel responsible, and so I'm going to keep trying, and I hope that they turn out, they end the semester learning,
Mm.
if not the same, even maybe even more, because if they get through this, then they get through, and then they're okay, that they're very sorted for life.
And this is a situation where they can thrive in also. This is that make or break type moment in their lives. They,
Yeah, and you can tell the
yeah,
ones that are focused, the ones that want to learn, the ones that are dying to learn. They will call you up, they will leave you WhatsApp messages separately, they will share things, they will read things when you send them. And then they're the ones who say, okay, but you didn't tell me, but I didn't understand,
yeah,
I didn't do it because I didn't get time. So you, that also, which is, I'm saying, merit, your actual clear transparency is going to start happening now. You can't fool so many people for so long. People will see through it.
right.
So yeah, interesting times.
But what about with the kids at home? How has that been? They've got school
Oh,
they had school going on from home, right?
they did, but now it's over. And the school part was crazy. So the older one, because he's 10, he manages pretty much on his own. But the younger one, I've had to sit with, and it's been difficult. Yeah, not because the work was difficult, but because you have to take that hat off, and then put that hat on, and really, really slow down, and just trace numbers on a screen for
Yeah.
15 minutes from 1 to 10 in the middle of a work day. That's a major hat shifting. Yeah, very tough. And not to mention that, you've got the Pakistani wife goal roti pressure on you. There is
Hmm.
a whole goal roti culture. Okay, you gotta make, not that my husband would be demanding gold chapatis, but there's a pressure. You gotta
There's that pressure, yeah.
sort the lunches and the dinners and make sure they're healthy, and the fact that grocery has to be cleaned so much, and the house has to be clean, and the laundry has to, so those things are there. I mean, everyone's doing them, but it's a lot. Like, even I love a lot, but this is a lot,
Yeah.
and I would
I
love for it to lessen soon.
I seriously hope that your students and your kids in the future will see this. And I hope your students see this, and I hope everyone on the team also sees this, because this is actually now this is reality. Like, this is
Hmm.
what people's lives are like. Like, you have
Yeah.
when you're at work, you're in a different environment altogether. But when you're
Yeah.
working from home, also, you have all these new persons. Everyone's in it, you know
Hmm.
and all the more reason for people to accept the fact that, okay, it's and I think in our position, more so in yours also, that transferring of hats is just ridiculous. That pace has to happen. And also
Yeah.
with your students now, I can only imagine. I actually like drawing parallels with students, with university students and times of recessions, because you I automatic for me personally, I automatically start looking or start admiring those people who entered the workforce at a time of recession, or graduated at a time of recession, or have experienced a recession, because that's when you see, okay, that's make
Yeah.
or break time for them. That's when they go from uh, as Michael Jordan says, that's when that's when I went from being Mike Jordan to Michael Jordan. Like, you hit that next phase in your life and you grow up all of a
Level up.
sudden and level up. Yeah. And that's again like when you have to start thriving, or start seeking opportunities to thrive, because you have to be really
Yeah.
uncomfortable in that position. So
But
when
isn't it a game of emotional intelligence, Asad? Knowing what you feel, why you feel, how to deal with it, and why it's important to deal with it in a certain time frame. I mean, to me, it boils down to the fact that we don't teach and talk about this enough. We don't tell people that if they're demotivated, it's not because they're stupid or because something great has to happen or whatever. It's because the wiring inside is done a certain way, and that could be just consequence of how your life has been. But that doesn't mean you can't change the wiring, right?
yeah,
You change the way you think very deliberately. And initially you had asked me about grit and things, and I think it's not a big deal. It's about choosing to be a person of grit. You stand at a fork in the road saying, you know what, I just can't, I think maybe I could give up. And then you have to have that voice in your head which says, you don't give up, you can't give up, giving up is not an option. So then you start walking, and when you start walking, that himmat comes. There's this thing my mom used to say which I found so weird when I was a kid. It said something like, an Urdu phrase like himmate marda, nahi,
Madad
himmate
Khuda.
something. Yeah. That one. Himmate marda, madad khuda. Is that it?
So yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know why it has mard in it. It should say insan, but so we can make a new one.
Yeah,
But no, honestly, so you take one
yeah,
step and then the rest gets easy because you start feeling confident and cool about yourself. That's what it is. Yeah.
yeah. And this is where um, I think we could go on and on also and talk about how to cope with pressure, how to deal with pressure also. But let's not get into that conversation. Actually, that's something that's
Yeah.
more behind the scenes of Backspace kind of conversation, and for everyone actually. But
We'll have those. We
well,
will have more of those. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. So, what do you say as a final note to this COVID convent kya keh raha tha? COVID part of the conversation? What is that one piece of advice that you would give to students who are about to graduate or who are still studying and have to start thinking about their life after university?
I think they should set short-term goals and they should just go from one goal to the other goal. Like one day when they're feeling very focused and serious about their life, they should sit down and they should set short-term goals. Like right now, I am enrolled in 6 classes. For these 6 classes, this is the advantage these 6 classes are going to give me.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe one not so important to me, so maybe I could put it on the back burner but still do well. But the others, these I really need. These are skills and things I have to learn to do well in the world because they come with my craft.
Mm-hmm.
Just set those goals, you know, and for those times push yourself. Don't think you're so fragile that you're going to break, because you're not going to break. We don't break so easily. Human beings are, you know, which is why I said Russian literature. You gotta look. That's why you gotta read, because if you read or you hear stories, you realize that, oh wow, people do this and I'm struggling with this. That constant reminder, and that makes, I know it makes young people anxious. Say, oh my god, I have so much pressure. It's just a mindset, and if you really want to get somewhere, write them down, stick them up on the wall, or put them on a mirror or something. Look at them. When you're done with them, tick them off. Get that pleasure of, taking something off. Write a new goal and go from, step to step. And you'll get through it. The year would end, your semester would end, and then new things will happen. And I think it's that karma thing. And when they do it, good things will start to happen. And they'll feel
Yeah,
really good about themselves too. That they got this, they got through this so well. Yeah, that's my advice to them.
interesting. And also nice to hear. I think that's also something that people should keep reminding themselves, regardless of which part of your life you're in, not just if you're a student.
Yeah.
Um, so Nagin, now let's actually talk about work right now. We've got 5 things to do after this call, anyways. But that's not the work that I mean. I mean the things that is pertaining to our industry. Um, you've been a communicator far longer than anyone I know in my own personal network, also, and you have that. You've been exposed to very different areas of the business of the industry itself. So what is that
Yeah.
area that you feel needs to change the most? I, for example, and like let me elaborate a little bit in this, just so I
Okay.
can clear out my own thoughts. For me, Backspace is that world. I don't look at competition outside. I don't look at other competing businesses, and I don't look at that as a client rush to pick up as many clients as possible and to, like, get everyone's money and to do pitches
Yeah.
and to I don't see that. I just see
Yeah.
it as, okay, this is what we're doing. This is what I'm doing. This is what I want to do to the best of my abilities. This is what I would like my team to also be pushed towards doing as well. And just keep
Mm.
doing work that matters for people who care. Like that Seth Godin quote is all that I see. Do work that matters for people who care. You, on the other hand, have been employed in this sector. You've then been nothing shy of having your own agency also, to now having your own agency and having your own startup in this sector. So what do you feel really needs to change in this industry?
Wow, that's a very broad question, Asad. I think if we had more conscientious, purpose driven people, or projects in advertising, which is what my reason for teaching is. I want people to understand that advertising is a tool, it is a superpower that you get, and through that, while selling something or riding on a brand or riding on the wings of something very which has money to be seen, you can also influence mindset positively. That is my that is the crux of it. For example, I like sharing things in class with my students where brands have gone beyond their selling of xyz product, version of that product, this that brand recall, top of mind, and all of that, and they have gotten into the fact that they've tried to, so it was, I know it's for selling, but what it also does is, for example, PNG, proud sponsor of moms, so many ads made on those moments where a mother connects to her child, or does things for her child which only a mother would do from world over, and putting those into a show reel and putting them there. Any mother who sees it feels encouraged, appreciated, understood, part of a clan. It builds her up, right? While PNG and Pampers benefit. But I think advertising and our industry, there are not enough people who are thinking like that. And I really want that kids who think about these things go into advertising, so like the world of advertising, and then come up with such messages and then use that amazing power to, because brands will not be able to do this forever. I think the lockdown has shown us that consumer mindset and this very material and capitalist world crumbles really fast. And now the brands who are standing out are the ones who they seem more human, and they're talking about caring for each other, or they're talking about those very cool insights, like how if you have grandparents, you should find a way to connect with them if you can't visit them now, and things like that. So those human connections that actually matter can be revived, preserved, encouraged through the platform of advertising. And every brand would love that, any brand would love that. You try to tell, I think recently locally there was this campaign by Can Baby, and I think it was done by Adcom, where they kind of attacked this social this taboo that there is about the mother who works does not care enough for her child. And there is one old lady who's talking about कि ये तो चली जाती है, ये घर में खाना भी नहीं, this that, and then somebody defends her, somebody says she doesn't do this, it doesn't mean she cares less for her baby. And it's a Pampers ad, I mean it's a Can Baby or whatever ad, but they attack, they did the two chidiya one pathar thing,
Mm-hmm.
and more brands are realizing this and they're doing it, and that will help us because your masses are watching. They're watching the Kenwood ads where the man who's sitting in the middle of his friends, and I think it was an Indian actor, but he's sitting with Nawazuddin, all the ads with him in it, and he says कि मैंने धुलाई कर दी अपनी बीवी की, and his friend said क्या हाथ उठाया आपने, and he said हाँ. So he's basically showing off that he hit his wife, which is a thing people do here, but they don't do it. They just seem to do it, right? They're just pretending to be macho, and so when the friends tease him, he kind of jumps up and he says he thinks his wife is there behind him, and he's like startled. And so they've used humor and all of that, and they've sold their AC, but basically they've also addressed something. So these are the things that I think the industry completely needs to start doing, like tomorrow, today. There's no
Yeah.
reason to delay it.
It's interesting how you say this because
I don't know if that answers your question.
no, it does. It actually does because it's very interesting how you say this because we've spoken about you and I've spoken about how it's a high time for brands to communicate, and it's the high time for companies to communicate and to put out that right message and to actually show what they believe in and to communicate to their consumers, to their audience, to anyone that who they have to talk to. But I was out on a ride today, on a bike ride, and I heard this podcast from HBR IdeaCast. It's titled "How Marketers Can Drive Social Change and Profits," and it features Miriam Sidibe, who's a senior fellow at Harvard Kennedy School, and is also part of Unilever, and she's
Okay.
worked on Lifebuoy, and she mentioned that it's her goal has always been, and she had a doctorate in health in the healthcare sector, and how she thought about passing on information to the masses, and she realized that okay, maybe I need to attach myself to a big brand that has that influence, because brands have always I'm taking this a little away from like social from a social context, but like brands have always been focused on passing on something related to hygiene, like washing your hands as well, right? So Unilever and Lifebuoy um, have she basically mentions the impact that she was able to make because of attaching herself to a big company, and then also leading that
Yeah.
marketing campaign, especially now, is that now is not the argument to wash your hands with Lifebuoy because that kills 99% of the germs. The objective is to wash your hands, period.
Yeah.
And that's because of the efforts that she's managed to bring in from a marketing perspective into into like fast moving consumer goods. So it's actually really interesting you say that, because I think that now if companies in Pakistan if aren't thinking along those lines, it's this next generation, it's our generation that's actually going to be able to bring about that positive change as they're having these conversations. Sean had that
And
campaign also recently.
you know how you and I are always we're figuring out for work. We're figuring out which algorithm works better, what content did well, why on Instagram, and even Instagram and Facebook, and even the communities online are very sharp about figuring this out. Nobody wants to be advertised to. Nobody wants to know, because they already know the things they want to know. Most people don't need those ads anyway. They find ads annoying, which is pretty obvious by the skip ad phenomena. So it has to stand for something, and I think most brands want to stand for something, and it is up to creative minds to actually figure that out. They probably even do stand for something, they just don't know how to structure it into a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year, 20-year, sort of positioning and communication strategy and all of that. They would love for somebody to come and say that let's take this bigger and more human, and because that will probably sell better in today's media. It will sell better. It will, so interestingly, advertising was only the history of advertising. It was only created for giving people choice. And now
Mm-hmm.
all the arrows point in the other direction. It is the consumer doesn't want choice. They choose what they want to see. So it has flipped completely. So I think as soon as we can get off this ये खरीदो सबसे अच्छा top best and all of that, we really should do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a bit of a selfish question also to ask you. Is that
Okay.
uh, based on all these conversations around insights and consumer preferences and trends also that we're trying to spot and analyze, what got you
Mhm.
to also what got you to believe in the concept of the summit that we're doing?
Well, one, that you were passionate about it, because I love that. I think if someone is so gung ho about something, I'm just going to help them do it. Especially if it's someone like you who, would have thought it through. Secondly, I completely agree with those. Well, I agree with the fact that there needs to be a conversation, and I agree with the pillars you picked up. um, Mindset is everything. Your whole life is your mindset. It is influenced and run and directed and designed by your mindset. So mindset needs much more thought. We have to think about how we think. I say that, and I wish I could figure out time and write a book on it or something. I have a lot to say on that subject, and we will do that when we do the summit. um, Innovation is a buzzword that kind of irritates me a little bit, and I even told you that I have a bit of a
A piece towards
seen
it.
too much. Yeah, you've seen so much of it, and there's been like 16,000 conferences on innovation in Karachi, and you just, I don't know, it doesn't excite me the same way. But I think that the way we translated it when we discussed it in detail was that there is this element of jugaad in Pakistan, that on even in very high corporate level meetings, there is someone who's thinking like what they call a jugadu, and so they come up with these really cool hybrid solutions. So yeah, it involves creativity, and it is needed very, very much, especially here where the landscape has a lot of traditional things happening, but then there's also cool creative startup stuff happening. So yeah. And then there is communication, which I don't need to explain. It's kind of attached to my name and what I do. And sustainability, again, a word that I shy away from, because I don't know why communication and sustainability had to be such long words. Why couldn't it have been short words, like
Like two
thrive.
syllables or four letters
Yeah,
like
like
that.
thrive. I love the word thrive. I feel like you say thrive and it means, it hits you like drum. And so
Yeah.
anyway, this sustainability, for want of a better word, is a huge serious concern right now, because there is this whole global conversation happening about ab kya hoga, new normal kya hoga, have we done this to the planet, is this going to keep happening, and the kind of economic sort of damage that has happened. We've got to rethink our ways, so let's come up with better solutions, smarter ways. So yeah, it's very pertinent to what's happening. So yes, that's why I believe in it. And also I feel like, Asad, you and I have conversations with such interesting people in meetings and otherwise, because we love to have them, and we together know so many interesting people doing great projects, and I feel it's important to have that word. So as camera shy as I may be, I think it's a responsibility we have, so we should do the summit. You have my full support and
But you're doing
enthusiasm.
great so far right now with the camera, so I think
I
that
know.
part is cleared. So
I'm trying not
how
to look at myself. I'm just looking at you now.
yeah. I try to make sure that I'm looking at myself, so I'm not in some weird like posture position and like start curling my back up too much. But
Yeah, I will.
no, but how do you like this experience so far? This behind the grind aura that I'm trying to create right now. Kaisa diya?
It's interesting. So when I watch other people's behind the grinds, I keep wondering how it feels to talk about yourself for so long. Uh, so yeah, I'm now that I'm doing that, and if I see this up, I will figure it out maybe. This is new for
Awesome.
me.
Yeah, yeah. So um, let's wrap this one up. Actually, Nagin, I think that this has been
Yeah.
a pretty great conversation, not just about yourself, but also about your outlook as well. What you're receiving, what you're reflecting out as well. That's always great to hear.
Okay.
Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for sharing what you've
No.
shared.
When are we doing a behind the grind about you?
We'll see that as it comes. Like I'm not too. I'm secretly waiting for that. I'm secretly waiting for like not even a behind the grind podcast, but like a documentary on myself. But that's the
Listen,
narcissist in me. Huh?
Since we're recording this, I am going to announce that we're going to do a Backspace podcast, and it will start with a focus on you. We will do one about you, which will be about Asad Hashim Ali. Okay.
Now remember this, by the way, since this goes up on social media and it's documented. It's documented now. There's no takebacks
I am all for it. I
on
will
it.
ask so many questions.
Done. We'll do it. We'll
Let's
do
take
it.
it.
All right.
Done.
But
Done.
as a final question, again, if you could, and I ask this question to everyone who comes on the show, if you could go back in time and you could meet your childhood self, what would you
Yeah.
tell?
I don't know. I don't know. So the only thing that comes to mind is that
Eat your
please,
vegetables. No.
no, yeah, well, it was close to that. It was that please believe the fact that it's really, really hard to not get fat, because that has always been one of my fears in life. And when I hit 30, I realized why it's such a big issue and why older people get fat. And I could tell myself that, you know what, it's going to happen to you and you better figure this thing out.
Figure this
Because I
weight
think,
thing out.
yeah, because I think the denial just took me forever, so maybe I would be, if I had a time machine, maybe I would be fitter right now if I could tell myself that this fat, growing fat thing actually happens. It's not just people who eat like 16 McDonald's burgers in a day. It's just slow metabolism and stuff.
But again, you know what? Hang out with people like you, with Bilal, with Ali, everyone like is just like way older than me, and I just keep one thing that's common amongst everyone, like all of you guys especially, is health. And that's what makes me shit my pants the most also, is like, hey, how bad is my health going to become? Like I do not want to end up pre-diabetic or have like some lung issue or any of that. I don't want to lose my hair. I don't care if I gain a little weight. I just don't want to lose my hair. None of that.
So these things happen, right? These things happen. I'm losing hair. I mean, these things happen. Age it's a scary thing. And then the denial bit of it, that you don't want to believe it's happening. But
Yeah. Well, once again, Nagin, thank you so much. Thanks for doing this. I know the kids are either might be awake.
No, they're asleep.
Great. But everybody, thank you again. Everybody, hope you enjoyed this. That was Nagin Ansari from the CEO of Backspace and also group head at Ithaca Capital. Double the mal from Nagin Ansari. Thank you guys for listening. In the next episode, we don't know who's going to be there, but it's going to be a solid banger as well. And if you made it this far, then tune in to our website, backspace.works, www.backspace.works, for our summit, our first virtual summit called Mics On, which is around mindset, innovation, communication, and sustainability. And also, as Nagin announced it, Backspace's own podcast coming out soon. Come into a channel near you. Till the next one. Peace out, everybody. Bye-bye.